It was the kind of cold that didn't just bite, it lingered, crawled under the skin, wrapped itself around the bones, and whispered reminders that survival is not guaranteed, not even in a city like Boston, where skyscrapers flash power above sidewalks littered with forgotten lives. Tyler Mason, 28, sat on the edge of a cracked wooden bench just outside the downtown bus depot, his backpack between his feet, shoulders hunched against the wind. His coat was thin. His shoes had holes. He held a sandwich in his hands, 2 slices of wheat bread, some leftover turkey, a smear of mustard. Nothing special. But it was all he had. The only thing separating his stomach from another empty night. He hadn't eaten since the day before. Not because he couldn't find food, but because he'd made a promise to himself. 1 sandwich a day. No more, no less. Ration it. Stretch it. Make it last. He was on the edge. Not just of hunger, but of everything. He had come to Boston 6 weeks earlier, chasing a job that evaporated the moment he arrived. Another broken promise from a recruiter who ghosted him after the first interview. No friends here. No family. No savings. Just a duffel bag, a notebook filled with worn-out plans, and the belief, however naive, that things had to change. But change never announces itself. Sometimes, it sneaks in wearing worn shoes and a stare that cuts through comfort. That morning, as Tyler unwrapped his sandwich with shaking fingers, a man sat down at the far end of the bench. No hello. No eye contact. Just silence. The stranger was older, maybe mid-50s. Unshaven. Wearing a heavy wool coat that had seen better years. His face was weathered but not broken. His hands were clean. His posture still carried the ghost of dignity. Tyler noticed him, of course. You always notice when you're that close to someone in a world that avoids closeness. But he didn't speak. Until he saw the man glance, just once, at the sandwich. Not long. Not lingering. But enough. Enough to recognize something deeper than hunger. Shame. The kind of shame that comes from not asking. Tyler's body moved before his brain gave permission. He tore the sandwich in half, held one half out without a word. The man looked at him, really looked, like he hadn't been seen in years. Then, without a smile, without performance, he accepted the offer. They sat in silence, chewing slowly, like monks in meditation. The bread stuck to the roof of Tyler's mouth. The meat was dry. But somehow, it tasted warmer. Like it meant more. Like the hunger wasn't the only thing being fed. After a while, the man spoke. Quiet. Gravelly. You didn't have to do that. Tyler shrugged. You looked like you needed it. And you don't. Tyler met his gaze, unsure whether to lie or laugh. I'm used to it. The man nodded slowly, like he understood something Tyler hadn't said. What's your name? Tyler. I'm Eli. They shook hands. It was nothing. But it would change everything. They kept talking. Tyler told him the basics. Grew up in Ohio. Dropped out of college after his dad died. Been working odd jobs ever since. Tried construction. Kitchen work. Security. Nothing stuck. The world always seemed one step ahead, doors closing just as he reached them. Eli said less. Said he'd been around. Used to work with people who didn't like to be seen. Gave no details. But his eyes told stories his mouth didn't. Tyler caught glimpses of something deeper. Something scarred but wise. Eventually, Eli stood. You got a place to stay? Tyler hesitated. Not really. Eli dug into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded slip of paper, handed it to him. Go here. Ask for Mary. Tell her Eli sent you. They'll let you sleep there for a few nights. You won't find it on Google. Don't tell too many people about it. Tyler stared at the paper. No address. Just a street name and a crossroad. Handwritten in faded ink. He looked up. Why are you helping me? Eli's expression didn't change. "You fed me. Can't say that happens often anymore." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like a whisper in the wind. Tyler stood there a long time, holding the paper, feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Not the loud kind. The kind that hides inside ordinary moments. A shared sandwich. A street name on a scrap of paper. A stranger who somehow saw you when the rest of the world looked away. He went that night. Took 2 buses. Walked the last 8 blocks. Found the building exactly where Eli said it would be. No sign, no lights, just a gray door with peeling paint beside a laundromat. He knocked twice. A woman answered. Mid-40s. Sharp eyes. Kind face. "You must be Tyler," she said before he could speak. He froze. "Yeah. Come in. We've got soup on the stove." She didn't ask questions. Didn't demand anything. Just showed him to a cot in a clean, quiet room with 7 other beds. Gave him a towel. A toothbrush. A blanket that smelled like lavender and something older, something safe. He slept deeper that night than he had in months. Not because the bed was soft, but because, for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a ghost. He went back to the bus depot every day that week. But Eli never showed up again. Not once. He asked around. No one had seen him. It was like he had vanished. But he had left something behind. Not just the address. Something larger. A question that wouldn't leave Tyler's mind. Who really was Eli? And why did it feel like that sandwich had triggered something much bigger than it seemed? Because a week later, a black car pulled up outside the shelter. And Tyler's name was on the list. The car wasn't just black. It was silent, the kind of vehicle that glided, not rolled. Tinted windows, no emblem, nothing flashy. Just presence. A presence that didn't ask for attention but demanded it anyway. Tyler stood at the curb, one hand clutching the frayed strap of his backpack, the other twitching nervously in his jacket pocket. He hadn't been called by name in so long, it almost felt surreal when the driver stepped out and said it with such calm certainty. "Mr. Tyler Mason?" He almost laughed. "Mr." No one had ever called him that. He nodded. The man opened the door. "We've been expecting you." Tyler didn't move. He looked back at the shelter, its chipped bricks, its window boxes filled with dying plants, the thin trail of steam rising from the kitchen vent. Inside, Mary was probably pouring soup, talking to someone about the rain. There was safety there. Predictability. But this wasn't about safety. This was about the stranger who had disappeared. And the part of Tyler that refused to believe Eli was just a hungry man with nowhere to be. He slid into the back seat. The leather was soft. Real. Warm from the sun. The car pulled away, and the city shifted around them. Tyler watched it all blur by. Bus stops, street vendors, corner stores with neon signs half-lit and flickering. The route was unfamiliar. Not toward downtown. Not toward anything he recognized. He thought about asking where they were going. But something stopped him. A hunch. A feeling. That whatever was waiting didn't want to be introduced with explanations. About 20 minutes later, the car pulled into a narrow, tree-lined driveway hidden between 2 brick warehouses. At the end of the path stood an old stone building, 3 stories, ivy crawling up its walls, windows tall and arched. It looked like a university hall, or a private library forgotten by time. The driver stepped out and opened the door for him. "He's inside." Tyler swallowed. "Who?" But the man only smiled. "You'll see." He followed the stone path, his boots echoing on the wet pavement. The wooden door creaked as it opened. Inside, the air was warm. Books lined the walls. A fireplace burned low in the far corner. And at the center of the room, seated at a long table with a steaming cup of tea, was Eli. But not the Eli he remembered. Gone were the frayed coat, the distant gaze, the weariness. He wore a tailored jacket now. Crisp shirt. Clean shave. He looked powerful. Not like a man who had been saved. Like a man who had been watching. Tyler froze. You. Eli looked up, his eyes exactly the same. Still tired. Still deep. But now, unmistakably sharp. Sit, he said. Please. Tyler sat. His voice cracked. What is this? Eli smiled. It was a sad smile. Not the kind you give when you're proud. The kind you give when someone finally steps through the right door after walking past it their whole life. I lied to you, Eli said. Not about the shelter. That part was real. But about who I am. Tyler blinked. Why? Because no one shows their real face to a stranger. But you did. You had one sandwich left and you gave me half. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You just saw a man in pain and acted. Eli leaned forward. I needed to see if anyone still would. Tyler shook his head slowly, his pulse now audible in his ears. So who are you? The older man sat back in his chair. I built companies. Sold them. Bought others. I have homes I don't live in, cars I don't drive, assets that move without my permission. But all of it, means less to me than the moment you tore your sandwich in half. Tyler couldn't breathe. I've been watching people for years, Eli continued. Looking for someone like you. Not just kind, but honest. Unpolished. Uncoached by the world. I don't understand, Tyler whispered. You will. Eli reached into a leather folder beside him and pulled out a single envelope. Inside this, there's a 1-year contract. You'll work directly under me. Paid training. Housing covered. If you do well, you'll manage a new foundation I'm building, one that finds people exactly like you, right before the world breaks them completely. Tyler just stared at him. He had nothing. No resume. No degree. Just stories. Failures. Scraped knees and half-healed wounds. Eli saw the hesitation. I don't need perfect, he said. I need real. Tyler's voice was hoarse. Why me? Eli's eyes softened. Because when the world offered you nothing, you still chose to give. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was sacred. Like something had shifted in the atmosphere. Like two parallel lives had finally converged. Tyler reached for the envelope, his fingers trembling. He didn't open it. Not yet. He just held it in both hands like it might dissolve. Then, quietly, thank you. Eli shook his head. No. Thank you. Because in a world where so many people walk by, hardened, distracted, afraid to see each other, Tyler Mason had done the unthinkable. He had noticed. And that single unremarkable act had set in motion a story that neither of them would ever be able to explain without sounding crazy. But it wasn't crazy. It was human. And it was just beginning. Tyler didn't sleep that night. He lay on the bed of his temporary apartment, clean, quiet, warm. Sheets that didn't scratch. Lights that worked. A fridge that hummed softly in the corner, full. It should have been comforting. It should have made him feel safe. But all it did was make him feel exposed. Because the moment you get what you never thought you would, is the moment you start wondering if someone's going to take it away. He stared at the ceiling until dawn. Eli had given him keys, a phone, a binder labeled orientation, and a simple message, show up tomorrow. 8 sharp. We'll see what happens. It wasn't a test. But it felt like one. Tyler arrived 15 minutes early. The building was different this time. Sleek, modern, all glass and steel, nestled in the financial district where people wore purpose like armor. The reception desk was empty. No security. Just a black door with a keypad. He stood there, staring at it, unsure what code he was supposed to use. Then it opened from the inside. A woman in a gray suit stepped out. Early 30s. Serious eyes. She looked him over quickly, like she was measuring something more than his height or posture. Like she could see right through him. "You're Tyler," she said. Not a question. He nodded. "I'm Rhea. I'll be training you." She didn't smile. Didn't offer a handshake. Just turned and walked back through the door. He followed. Inside was a space that looked nothing like a corporate office. There were bookshelves instead of screens. Warm lighting. Natural wood. Rooms that felt more like private libraries than workspaces. It was quiet. Not the kind of silence that comes from emptiness, but the kind that comes from deliberate design. Rhea led him into a small room with 2 chairs and a whiteboard. She gestured for him to sit. He did. She sat across from him and said nothing for a long time. Just watched. Then, "Eli told me about you. He said you gave him your lunch." Tyler shifted. "It was just a sandwich." Rhea's tone didn't change. "Nothing is ever just anything. That's the first thing you'll learn here." He nodded, unsure what to say. "You've been hired into a position we don't advertise. You won't find it online. There's no roadmap. No playbook. You're not here because of your resume. You're here because of your instincts." Tyler tilted his head. "Instincts." Rhea leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "There are 3 things you can't teach in a classroom: decency, discernment, and timing. You showed all 3. You acted without incentive, read a situation no one else noticed, and did it in a moment that mattered." Tyler looked down, rubbing his palms together. "I'm not sure I belong here." Rhea didn't blink. "That's the second thing you'll learn. The people who belong in places like this never feel like they do." She handed him a file. Inside were profiles. Real people. With real problems. A single mom in foreclosure. A teenager aging out of foster care. A war vet with untreated PTSD. "These," she said, "are the people we serve. Quietly. Discreetly. No press. No credit. Eli believes wealth should move through people, not just to them." Tyler flipped through the pages, feeling something in his chest tighten. "These aren't charity cases," she added. "They're turning points. You're not here to save anyone. You're here to notice the moment that matters most, and do something about it." He looked up. "How?" Rhea smiled for the first time. It wasn't warm. It was sharp. Sober. Precise. "You'll learn." That week was a blur. Every day, Tyler arrived early and stayed late. Rhea drilled him with case studies, sent him into mock situations, forced him to read body language, listen between the lines. He learned how to identify desperation when it came disguised as arrogance. How to tell the difference between someone drowning and someone dragging you under. At night, he collapsed into bed. He didn't eat much. Didn't call anyone. There was no one to call. He just worked. And one night, as he sat staring at the case of a janitor with a hidden talent for woodcarving, something hit him. He hadn't thought about survival in days. For the first time in years, his hunger had changed. It wasn't about food. It was about meaning. The next morning, Eli appeared unannounced. He walked into the training room like he'd never left it. Rhea stood, nodded respectfully. Then exited. Eli took the seat across from Tyler. "You look different," he said. Tyler laughed under his breath. "I feel different." "Good," Eli said. "Now it's time for the first real test." Tyler's heart jumped. "Test." Eli leaned in. "Tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. There's a diner on Brighton Avenue. You'll go in, sit by the window, and wait. Someone will sit across from you. They'll ask you one question." Tyler nodded slowly. "And what do I do?" Eli smiled, that same cryptic smile from the park bench. "You'll know." He stood and walked away. No further instructions. No clarification. Just one more moment that felt impossibly simple, and unmistakably important. Tyler sat there alone, staring at the chair Eli had just left. And for the first time, he didn't feel like a man with nothing. He felt like a man who had started something. And somewhere deep inside, he knew. The real story hadn't even begun. The diner smelled like burnt toast and second chances. It was the kind of place where no one looked up when you walked in. Booths upholstered in cracked red leather. Waitresses moving like they'd done this for decades, pouring coffee that tasted like memory and ash. A bell above the door jingled behind Tyler as he stepped in, the morning chill still clinging to his jacket. He was early again. 6:42. He slid into a booth by the window, just like Eli had said. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the light was starting to pull through the blinds, thin, gold, and honest. He ordered black coffee and nothing else. He couldn't eat. His stomach was too full of questions. What was the question the person would ask? How would he know what to do? What if he missed it? What if he failed? The thought looped over and over, until a shadow crossed the table. A woman, maybe mid-40s, modestly dressed, plain navy coat, dark circles under her eyes, like sleep had stopped visiting her months ago. Her hands shook just slightly as she pulled out the chair across from him and sat down without a word. She didn't ask his name, didn't explain hers, just looked at him, and said one sentence. Would you tell someone the truth, even if it could destroy them? The diner around them didn't pause. Silverware clinked. Orders were called out. A toddler cried somewhere in the back. Life went on, oblivious to the gravity pressed between them now. Tyler's mouth went dry. The woman didn't blink. He didn't rush. He let the question wrap around his ribs, tightening. Would you deliver a truth so heavy it could collapse someone's world? Would you carry that weight, knowing it would leave them bleeding? And worse, would you still do it if they trusted you? He looked at her again. Really looked. She had the look of someone already broken. But something in her eyes was still asking. Still willing to face something. She wasn't looking for comfort. She was asking for clarity. Tyler leaned forward. His voice was steady. If the truth could destroy them, he said slowly, then the lie already is. She didn't react. Not at first. Just kept looking at him. And then, her lips quivered. She nodded once. A tight, small nod that looked more like surrender than agreement. She stood. Left a $10 bill on the table. Walked out the door. Gone. No name. No explanation. But Tyler didn't need one. He knew, in the pit of his chest, that it had been real. That this wasn't a drill. She hadn't been a hired actor or an internal test. She had been sent to him. Because maybe, just maybe, he could say what no one else in her life had the strength to say. And she needed that. Desperately. He sat there for a long time after she left, untouched coffee growing cold in his hands. No applause. No confirmation. Just the quiet ringing of his own heartbeat. And a subtle, terrifying realization. He had passed something. And whatever was coming next would be even heavier. The silence followed him home. Not the kind that comforts. The kind that echoes, that expands the more you try to ignore it. Tyler sat on the edge of the bed, his coat still on, hands pressed together between his knees. The woman's question kept pulsing in his head, like a bell that refused to stop ringing. Would you tell someone the truth, even if it could destroy them? He didn't even know her name. Didn't know what truth she was holding. Didn't know what story he had walked into that morning at the diner. But somehow, he knew the answer had meant something. Not just to her. To whoever was watching. Because someone always was. A soft knock pulled him from the fog. He opened the door. Eli. Same coat as before. Same tired eyes. But something different now. Not warmer, not softer, just clearer. Walk with me, he said. No explanation. Just that quiet invitation again. Tyler didn't ask questions. He followed. They walked down empty streets lit by the late afternoon gold. Boston in the fall had a melancholy Tyler was learning to respect. Not sadness, exactly. Just wait. History in the bricks. Choices buried under every sidewalk crack. I heard about the diner, Eli said. Tyler didn't respond right away. He wasn't sure what he was allowed to say. Eli didn't seem to mind the silence. After a moment, he continued. She wasn't sent there by me, you know. Tyler turned to him. What do you mean? I mean, Eli's voice dropped, almost like he was speaking to the wind. The right people find us when we're ready to hold what they can't. They walked a few more steps in silence before Eli stopped near a bench facing the river. He sat. Tyler joined him. There was a pause. Long, intentional. Then Eli said, "Let me tell you something I've never told anyone." Tyler felt the weight shift. Felt the moment ask him to lean in. Eli kept his eyes on the water. 15 years ago, I was walking out of a hotel in Chicago. It was snowing. I was late for a meeting. And this guy, maybe 30, drunk, eyes glassy, stumbled in front of me. Asked for $5. I pushed past him. Didn't even look. Just brushed him off like he was a nuisance. Tyler didn't move. Just listened. That night, Eli continued, I watched the news. That man had died. Froze to death. Just a few blocks from where I saw him. They found a note in his jacket pocket. Just 5 words. Eli paused. Then said it quietly. I thought someone would care. The words cut. They didn't land in Tyler's ears. They hit under his ribs. Eli looked at him now. That was the beginning of the end for me. Not because I killed him. But because I realized how many people I'd been stepping over my whole life without even noticing they were real. Tyler felt his throat tighten. I had money, Eli said. I had influence. But I had no awareness. I was successful in the places that don't matter. And bankrupt where it counts. Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. Why are you telling me this? Eli turned his full gaze on him, steady, sharp. Because I'm not going to live forever. And someone needs to carry this forward. Someone who knows what it feels like to go hungry and still choose to share. Tyler froze. A wind passed between them, not cold, but consecrating. You're not here to serve me, Tyler. You're here to succeed me. Those words hung in the air like smoke after fire. And Tyler didn't speak. Because he couldn't. Something inside him was unraveling. Not with fear, but with a strange, unspoken sense of arrival. All those lost jobs. All those lonely nights. All the meals skipped, the calls unanswered, the streets slept on. They hadn't been a detour. They had been the road. And for the first time, he saw it. He wasn't just part of a story. He was being entrusted with one. The letter came on a Monday. No return address. Heavy paper. Ink that looked handwritten, but wasn't. Just one sentence on the page. We've been watching too. Tyler stood in his apartment for a long time, just staring at those 5 words. The envelope had been slid under his door sometime in the early morning. No footsteps. No knock. Just presence. He should have been afraid. He wasn't. Because by now, he had learned. Real power doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It waits. And it chooses. That evening, Eli called. Pack a bag, he said. I'm sending a car. It's time. Tyler didn't ask time for what. He just packed. 2 shirts. A notebook. The same jacket he'd worn the day he gave up half a sandwich to a stranger. By midnight, he was in the back seat of another unmarked car, driving up a mountain road he didn't recognize. Boston was far behind them now. The silence in the car was complete. Even the tires barely made sound on the wet asphalt. They arrived at a large house. Not a mansion. Not ostentatious. Just Timeless. Stone walls. Glass doors. A wraparound porch that faced the stars. Eli was waiting at the entrance. He wore no coat. Just a black sweater and that same stillness that never seemed to leave him. "Come in," he said. Tyler stepped inside and everything changed. The room was filled with people. 10, maybe 12 of them. Men and women. All ages. All silent. They turned toward him slowly. And in their eyes, Tyler saw something terrifying and beautiful. Recognition. Not of his face. Of his decision. Eli gestured toward the center of the room, where a large wooden table stood beneath a skylight. At its center was a single object. A binder. No logo. No label. Eli walked to it, opened it, then looked at Tyler. "You're not here because of your past. You're here because of your capacity." He flipped the first page. Tyler stepped closer. Inside were names. Dozens of them. People he didn't know. Some with photos. Some with nothing but handwritten notes. All of them people on the edge. Some falling. Some hiding. Some almost gone. "These," Eli said, "are your beginning." Tyler stared. "This is what we do," Eli continued. "We watch what others ignore. We intervene when no one's looking. We listen where others judge. We move where no one else wants to stand still." His voice dropped, softer now. "Not every life can be saved, but every life can be seen. And sometimes, that changes everything." Tyler looked at the names again. Some were marked with red ink. Some had notes like, "Wait until the 3rd week," or "Only if they ask twice." This wasn't charity. It was surgical. Precise. Targeted empathy. "What is this?" Tyler asked, his voice cracking. Eli took a breath. "This is what the world never sees. And what holds it together anyway." No applause. No headlines. Just people. Giving quietly. Because they can. Because they must. And Tyler, this man who once slept in shelters, who had rationed food and hope in equal parts, who had doubted his own worth every day of his life, now stood at the center of something vast, invisible and real. He looked up. Every eye in the room was still on him. But they weren't judging. They were waiting. He didn't give a speech. Didn't ask for instructions. He just stepped forward and picked up the binder. Years would pass. He would go on to change lives. Hundreds. Quietly. Without credit. He would see people at their worst, their weakest, their most raw, and never look away. He would lose some. And it would break him every time. But he would keep going. Because someone had once looked at him when he had nothing to offer. And called it enough. Sometimes, Emily, a girl he helped when she was 13 and on the verge of disappearing into the foster system, would ask him, "Why do you do all this?" And he would smile the same way Eli used to. Not big. Just enough. Then say, "Because someone once shared a sandwich with me when they didn't have to." She'd laugh, not knowing the weight behind the words. And he wouldn't explain. Because some truths are only meant to be lived. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.